I am delighted to be here both personally and officially. In her previous life, and for some years, I personally was her deputy. She who is now Director General of IDLO. I'm immensely proud of that long period of time under her leadership. Few truly are her equal in personal integrity, in intellectual stature, and in sheer bloody-minded stamina. It's an Australian term, shared with New Zealanders, for human rights. With greater dignity, though, and more officially, let me also bring you the warmest greetings from the High Commissioner, Michelle Bachelet, who would wish you to understand what a joy it is for us to have this opportunity to affirm here that IDLO is indeed a key partner for the UN human rights system. Championing the rule of law and access to justice, IDLO is delivering invaluable expertise the world over, wherever they can, where governments and communities recognise that the rule of law is an asset, not a threat, to peace and to sustainability, to inclusion, that legal scrutiny is essential if those with power to do great harm are instead to do great good. Excellencies, the Rome-based international community knows well how human beings hunger for food, how we all thirst when parched. But it is just as true that we all long for justice. Thank you, IDLO, for your advocacy at such as the Human Rights Council and the UN General Assembly, for that particular justice for which women and girls long, for the justice longing too of Indigenous people, of people with disabilities and of young people. Thank you for upholding through your work on such as business and human rights that affirmation made clear in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that all organs of society have duties to rights. The right to education, to health, to shelter, to decent work that we might all have to hand dignity's essentials. The right to life, to liberty, to security of person, that we might all live and love without fear. Freedom from discrimination, arbitrary arrest, from torture, that we might all have the confidence that governance too is fair. The right to a fair trial, which underpins all freedom. The right to speak out, to stand up, so that we may not be, by malice or neglect, rendered silent. Friends, tough as these right standards are at times to uphold, inconvenient as they are to power that would rather be unaccountable, and while under pressure they remain, nonetheless they endure. Forged neither in privilege nor prosperity, but amidst rather the rubble, rack and ruin of reckless rancour. Adoption 70 years ago of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights gifted to us merely an enduring encapsulation of what makes for a humanising relationship between power and powerlessness. Let's at least put deliberate mischaracterisation to rest. The Declaration was not an impost of the West, who were in fact amongst its most reluctant drafters. Its content and its earliest application were pressed for by states newly decolonised: Ghana, Liberia, Jamaica. Latin America advocated for economic and social rights. The Soviet Union called for provisions to combat race discrimination. Pakistan and India pressed hard for recognition of equal pay, equal distribution of property, and equal application of marriage laws. It was India's delegate who urged with success that the Declaration's first article read, not that all men are born equal, but rather all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and in rights. Imagine that. Responding to the gravest violent extremism in living human memory, our forefathers and our foremothers worked over 81 sessions and 168 amendments to give to us that which the Chilean co-drafter called an historic consensus, a consensus on the supreme value of each and every individual human being. The supreme value granted not by gift of some worldly power, he wrote, but rather in the fact of our existence. The mere fact of existing. 70 years later, that consensus about what it means to be humanized, as compared to dehumanized, is no less relevant, but it is under significant strain. After all, ours is a very different world. It's more globalized, more interconnected, more interdependent. It's hardwired so by finance and trade. It's woven so by science and technology. It's encircled so, sky and ocean, by the results of our rapacious depletion of Earth's finite resources. It's connected so by information's superhighways. And it's made more tragically so with these tough pathways trudged by so many in their often perilous movement within and across borders. Pathways of flight paved in terror's toxic tarmac and bigotry's brutal betrayals. Neither our parents nor our schoolroom teachers foresaw Silk Roads redrawn, trade routes made virtual too, the local digitized, policy pivots reduced to a tweet. The personal no longer merely the private, the local by technology made somehow less geographical, physical distance between us contracting by a so-called social media that is just so anti-social. Contemporary times, they're tough times for rights because they're tougher times for most people and turbulent times for many. How on earth are we to steward this village planet towards greater human solidarity, the foundation for our mutually assured liberty and our habitat sustainability, to a sturdier justice and inclusive equality, the foundation too of equitable economies, to a deeper common dignity, these things being the building blocks for more certain peace, adjudicated too by more resilient and inclusive democracies. The evidence is as clear as history is long. We will not get there through contempt for the foreigner, by baseless distrust of those who love or look or worship differently. We will not lead well in this world of change through intensified clampdowns on the freedom of the press, encroachment on public movement, closure of borders to people fleeing persecution, gagging of activists, or deliberately denying life-saving sexual and reproductive health services and care. Wrong in principle, wrong in practice. The false promises of stand-apart nationalism, fact-denying populism, and law-defying leadership, they won't evolve our global governance, our political, economic and legal systems into something better suited to this unfamiliar world, a world of global finance, big data, extreme inequality, intractable conflict, mass migration, ecological upheaval. Friends, if you confront in life multi-dimensional unknowables if one's technical competencies are stretched beyond limit, when publics are driven to fear and to anxiety, when the world's largest ever generation of young people are locked out of hope, when we know what the solutions are but can't deliver them, when what must be done is more than what can be done, it's then, it's now, that core values matter most. Values of who we are regardless. Values for today and tomorrow. That's where rights come in. Global values for globalised times. Universal, indivisible, tried and tested in the modern era over 7 decades. Never has a system of principles spread so far, so wide, so fast as have human rights in the post-World War II era. These are values we have to stand up for. And in their defence and for their application, we need the rule of law. And we need rules-based multilateralism. Friends, only concrete plans enable time-bound action on timeless promise. Thanks also to the United Nations member states, we have just such a plan in the form of the Sustainable Development Agenda. It's a plan that makes tangible and universal these core values, to make that work in a turbulent world. It's a promise to greater equality. It's a commitment that no one be left behind. But I want to share with you a view that its failure to adhere to global values, that is actively obstructing delivery of the SDGs, just as the same impediments undermine fulfilment of the Millennium Development Goals. Most notably, in the aftermath of 9/11 and of global financial crises, there has emerged a powerful competing counter-development agenda. It takes the form of policies and practices of hyper-securitization on the one hand and deep public purse austerity on the other. Hyper-securitization is doing to civil and political freedoms what austerity has done to economic and social rights, and done it for millions. UN Special Rapporteurs have pointed this out repeatedly, that the counter-terrorism regime is slipping into place a new human rights-defying legal regime, weakening international human rights and humanitarian law guarantees, being now so unanchored in the guarantees of procedural and substantive law that today even certain humanitarian assistance has been criminalised. De facto, a rewriting of the Geneva Conventions. That surveillance culture has escalated to the point where the very pillars of democratic society are under threat. Civil society, independent press, independent judiciary, free and fair elections, even universities, under attack as enemies of the state, enemies of the people. And contemporaneously, the afflictions of widespread austerity measures affecting all regions of the world by one means or another, these have cut away at the dignity of millions. These have deepened inequality, escalated wealth for the few, and fed a newly toxic resentment of the other, of those coming to take our jobs, robbing us of social security, of those stripping us of our identity, inventing new, old scapegoats, the migrant and the Muslim. There isn't a population untouched by these toxic policy twins. You can see it in every Gallup poll. You can feel it in every ballot box. What we do to address deepening inequality and to prevent violent extremism too must answer hate, not spread it. Must tackle unconscionable greed, not celebrate it. Enhance personal security for people living insecure lives, not weaken it. Build dignity and trust between and among communities, not tear that down. We are not made justice, prosperity or peace capable by disabling the human rights regime. You know, today global wealth distribution is largely uncontested by any form of governance or law whatsoever. Social inequality is largely left without social protection or legal remedy. And yet no one's hope can be rooted in the hopelessness of the other. That's why the work of IDLO with the Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights to strengthen gender equality and rights for vulnerable groups is so important. It is a pathfinder. We must deliver more security, but fear of acts of terror loom large in public consciousness, and yet in most places totally disproportionately so. Yet in all places, the betrayal that are crimes committed by the powerful, that is what is eroding public trust. Whether those perpetrators be high priests of culture, church or commerce. That's what the #MeToo movement tells us. Intimate personal security must be addressed more authoritatively, more convincingly, more lawfully. That's why IDLO's work at the municipal level in Honduras is a pathfinder. We must also challenge narratives of hate more effectively. Why are we failing to tell a truer, stronger story about our connections? Why are our narratives not more robust about our capacity for compassion, of how capable we are as cooperators more than competitors, of how most of us would prefer to be living in a world in which everybody was treated with respect and with decency. It's why IDLO's work in Afghanistan to promote access to justice and local ownership is a pathfinder. And finally, why are we not more competent at change leadership? Management guru Peter Drucker has said, you know, the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence. It is to act with yesterday's logic. For this, we need breakthrough thinking and breakthrough leadership. We don't need to look any further than around us. Few scientific, literary, artistic, technological or political breakthroughs and even fewer acts of courageous compassion have ever been made, would have ever emerged from those who will not stand up to orthodoxy. From civil society. Absent civil society, no end to slavery. Absent civil society, no affordable antiretrovirals. No protection of endangered species. No public exposure of child sexual assault. No legislation against child marriage or rape in marriage. No access to emergency contraception. No marriage equality. And yet, just when we most need that creativity, that breakthrough thinking, that talent, that contribution all over the world, civil society is facing unprecedented clampdown. Assassinations of human rights defenders are running at rates that shame us all. And our largest renewable energy source, young people, are largely locked out of decision making. Under the pretext of countering terrorism, 98 countries have passed laws restricting civil society. IDLO's work in places like Ukraine, South Sudan, Myanmar to enhance the technical capacity of civil society organisations is a pathfinder. We know it can be done. I don't want to suggest that significant change for the better hasn't happened. Poverty has been halved. Today, fewer women die when giving life, and many more newborns survive their first months to thrive as children in their early years, and many more of us are living much longer. Racism has been called out in law for the scourge that it is and always has been. Torture has been criminalised, even if unevenly. The death penalty increasingly is abandoned on the dust heap of history where it belongs. International jurisprudence has given greater material strength to ethereal ideas of universal human rights. But the report card of our progress is troubling. The pounding of malicious fists may grow louder and louder on the doors of our equality, our dignity, our privacy, and against our freedom. They'll have to be resisted again. In this, there's no north or south. There's no right or left. There's neither east nor west. There's only the humane and the inhumane. In the words of the extraordinary literary force Ursula Le Guin, hard times are coming, when we will be wanting the voices of those who see the alternatives to how we live now, can see through our fear-stricken societies and our obsessive technologies to other ways of being, can imagine real grounds for hope. For this, we need those who can be realists of a larger reality. Realists of a far larger, more generous, more compassionate, more justice-loving reality. But for that, we need leaders of courage. The courage of the 1948 generation. To imagine a world in which that recognition would always be held to, that born we all are, free and equal in dignity and rights. But in the interests of this larger reality, we'll have to lower the fist. We'll have to extend the hand. And we'll have to stand up. Use our rights to stand up also for theirs. Thank you.